Now to Super Bowl champion and color analyst for the Chicago Bears. It's the great Tom Thayer, and he joins us here on Kap and J Hood. Good morning, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing good, men. I want to thank you for entertaining me every day on my way to training camp throughout this early preseason. 1 o'clock practice today against the Cincinnati Bengals.
We always have a lot of fun and love having you on. It's one of the highlights of our week. So let's talk about what you watched from Caleb last Saturday, because your trained eye sees things that the rest of us do not. Because for me, I needed to smoke a cigarette after I watched his performance.
I just like the trust he put on display. So, he had that one pass where he rolled out to his right. He made the defensive end off balance. He fell to the ground, and now he had an open window of opportunity. And he allows those lengthier routes to come into play rather than taking the easy dump off that's right in front of his face. And I like to see his aggressiveness in that approach. On his scramble, I like his understanding of the interior protection by the offensive line. Even though they ran a stunt up front, he patiently waited for the offensive line to pass it off, and then he took off on his one and only scramble. And I like the fact that he knew on that little hook shot pass to DeAndre Swift, he had trust knowing exactly where he was going to be according to how that screen sets up. So it's those little things that I really, took away from Caleb is the solid understanding. Another pass he rolled out to the right, Gerald Everett was about 4 or 5 yards downfield, but he waited for DJ Moore to open up, and that was his one drop. And unfortunately, he would have finished 6 of 7 if he didn't have the drop by DJ and Cole, and it would have been, we would have probably been talking in more glowing up terms about his performance, and maybe Yurko would have given him a B+ or an A-
Oh my God,
rather than the grade he did give him in post game.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It's brutal. It was brutal. God almighty. Tom,
love the kid.
What surprised you most about the Bears' offensive line play against Buffalo?
So, late in the stages of the week, they found out Ryan Bates was not going to play the right guard position. So Coleman Shelton's got more snaps at center than Ryan Bates does up until this point. So then what was Chris Morgan, the offensive line coach, going to do? So he plugged in Matt Pryor. And you're talking about a big man, 6'7", 335 pounds. And how does he complement Darnell Wright at the right tackle, even though they don't have the couple hundred reps I believe an offensive line needs, in terms of the side. I think that they need way more than a couple hundred reps. However, they went out there and they played an efficient style of football. There were no mistakes according to the cadence. And I like the discipline they showed on the line of scrimmage, because even though you want to replicate noise at practice, and you guys have been out there and you hear when they turn up the music and everything, crowd noise and crowd flexion is different in a stadium than just listening to noise. So discipline on the line of scrimmage. They had one holding call by Darnell Wright, and that was because Caleb was trying to escape out of the pocket away from unbeknownst to Darnell Wright. And once he gets his arms outstretched, that official's there to throw the holding call flag. So discipline, understanding of the offense, and crowd noise discipline. I like what I saw out of this group.
It sounded like Ryan Poles was very aggressively going after Matthew Judon, who was traded to the Falcons yesterday, wouldn't give up a second, offered a third. They felt the Falcons' third would be higher, so they went there. What does that tell you?
They have a lot of faith in what Austin Booker has shown, what Daniel Harding has done the 2 weeks in a row that he's had his opportunity to play. And then is Judon, is he the type of defensive end type of guy that can play in a stance and play the run as well as trying to get the 10, 12 sacks out of him? Because in order to rush the passer, you got to be able to play the run. And I think that's one of the things that plagued this defense the worst last year, is their inability to play the run, to get into those pass rushing scenarios. So I think what I've seen out of Austin Booker so far, and like I said, Daniel Harding and even Khalib Kareem, what I've seen out of these guys, hey, man, let's go to bat with these guys. And listen, and Dominique Robinson probably played his best all-around run-stopping, winning at the line of scrimmage, pass rushing game last week. So maybe he's starting to see things more clearly from all the responsibilities a defensive end faces.
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot, Tom, as you well know, about the defense and defensive line and the pass rush, how it got better toward the end of the season. And I've been coming around to the thought is, look, you've got young players on this roster that have to develop. You have to find out whether or not they're going to be, difference makers or cornerstones for your franchise, like Javon Dexter or like Zach Pickens. And so my thought was, if they're going to bolster this defensive line through free agency or through a trade, if it happens in October, fine. But at some point, you got to figure out if these guys can help you. That's correct?
100%, Jay Hood. That's a great point. And, one of the things about Zach Pickens and Javon Dexter, they are playing better each week. They are improving in terms of their one-on-one rushes that they have in practice and how that figures into the course of the down and distance they're playing during the course of the game itself. And then when you go back, so if I'm going to go, 300 pass rushes a year against Steve McMichael, I know exactly what Steve is going to do in his stance, and he knows exactly what I'm going to do. And so then it kind of becomes an unfair battle, and you're just kind of refining what your technique and what you're trying to do against the opponent of the week. And let me give you one example of Austin Booker. When I watch Austin Booker in one-on-ones during the day, every day at practice, because the guys are a little bit familiar with him. When I see him go in the game, the guys are not familiar with him. He's a more effective, better pass rusher, and he's got a wider variety of moves and a larger arsenal. So to me, Austin Booker is a better in-game player than he is a one-on-one player. And sometimes you see that out of guys, and sometimes you see it out of natural gifted pass rushers when they're playing against an opponent that's not 100% familiar with them yet.
In terms of what the Bears are going to do with the starters on Saturday, what do you expect?
Man, I hope they get a minimum of a quarter and a half, or maybe even 2 quarters. And if they're not going to play them that Kansas City game, and you're talking about 17 days in between the Kansas City game and the start of the regular season, so what is that, 21 days between their last playing time to their next playing time? So yep. I want to, feed these guys enough reps. I want to see them play tired. I want to see them to make some multiple sideline adjustments and how they react accordingly when they get back on the field. So there's still a lot of things I need to see out of this group and their growing process. But if Caleb goes out there and gives me 2 quarters of mistake-free football, and I see that his trajectory is pointing through the roof, then, hey, maybe I'm okay not playing him in Kansas City. But it's going to be another hostile environment in Kansas City that I'd like to see these guys demonstrate discipline on the line of scrimmage according to the cadence of Caleb.
Tom, of course, I'm going to give the offensive line credit first. But I remember last week we were talking about Velus Jones and his value. Okay, he's proven me wrong so far. Like, it was good for him to run the football a little bit to get into the end zone. Good for him. But it's still – the question still stands about what they want to do at the running back position. Is Jones just going to stay as a wide receiver and a special running back? And what do you do with the running backs? Because you've got 3 or 4 guys, 5 guys that are going for positions here.
Yeah, the good thing about Velus is, so you can't only put him in the game and run sweeps with him. Mm-hmm. If you do that, there's going to be a red flag that goes up every time that he's in the I formation in the backfield. However, yesterday in practice, he made a nice they gave him a handoff, and now he had to incorporate interior vision and how the offensive line was going to get into their blocking schemes and how the play was going to open up on the second and third level. And it was super encouraging because that's what I've been waiting to see out of Velus, and the coaching staff offer those kind of carries in practice to see how he uses interior vision, not just exterior speed. So I like what I've seen out of Velus. However, I think Ian Wheeler is a really good running back. Khalil Herbert, you got to see where the future is with him. Roschon Johnson is back on the practice field yesterday, and I think that DeAndre Swift is super talented. So it's a good problem to have. Maybe one of these guys is tradable. So, I'm still going to feed Velus and Ian Wheeler a lot of carries in the remainder of this preseason, probably a Roschon Johnson if I feel he's healthy as well.
Hey, man, have a great weekend. Enjoy calling the game. I cannot wait to hear you and Jeff, but I'm just so excited to see where this thing goes when it kicks off against the Titans.
I am as well.
And other something else, Tom, I'd like to ask. So, you and Big Jeff were on HBO. Your voices, your analysis was on HBO. So, what do those checks look like? Because that's going to be in syndication at some point. You're going to be getting paid for that. So, how much is
large, Jay Hood? I'm going to take you and Kap out to dinner, and I'm going to pick up the check.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, because you're on HBO, that means there's going to be some extra coin coming your way, Tom.
I don't know. I honestly, Jay, I don't know about that. I just saw the episodes last night. I finally got a friend to send me their ability to watch HBO Max, so I'm up to date.
What did you think?
The first episode, if it wasn't the Bears, I would have turned it off in the first 10 minutes because it was boring me. But then it kind of held my attention, and I ended up watching the 2 episodes, and I will watch the remainder of them. So they got better after they started playing games.
Yeah, Shea feels they're too sanitized. He doesn't hear any profanity. He doesn't hear any coaches, getting after guys to a large degree. He wants more raw stuff.
I'm with Shea. I wish there was a little bit more chippiness inside the episodes.
Tell me, the whole thing just feels very edited down, and like they're dropping out the swear words. It seems like a super polished version of training camp. It doesn't seem necessarily authentic.
Yeah, one thing I don't want to see, and I've never liked on the Hard Knocks, is when it gets down to cutting time and they bring a guy in a room with cameras and they cut him.
The Turk.
Because that is one of the most difficult moments to live through in a kid that's 20, 21 years old, his life, his parents, and everybody else that is in that situation.
Right. Tom, we'd like to have you come in here. Coach needs to see it. You know what's about to happen, and there's all the cameras. But the funny thing was, I read the article, I think the Tribune did it, maybe it was the Sun-Times, that they have cameras everywhere around Hallis Hall, including in Poles and Eberflus's office.
Yeah.
And the lady, Shannon, the director, went up to Poles and said, so this DJ Moore extension, are you doing that in your office or somewhere else in the building? He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I have a camera in your office. I hear everything. You're doing an extension with DJ Moore. Oh,
wow.
Yes.
Huge.
How about that?
Yikes. Yikes.
Tom, in your career with the Bears taking on the Bengals, more times than not, you came out on top. Like in '86, in '86 it was 44-7. It was at Cincinnati where the Bears lost that game. But then there was a win in overtime in '92. Were you on that team?
Yes.
31-28.
Yes.
I win in overtime, I think. Yeah.
So let me tell you a funny story about the '86 game because it was super hot in Cincinnati, and Marty Schottenheimer was the coach at that point. He had a reputation that they would water down their old AstroTurf field, and then when the sun came out, it started beating humidity off of the surface. And so that's one where you saw McMahon was on the sideline of the game and he had a towel around his head with a bandana holding the towel down because it was so frigging hot. And that was always what the kind of the filtered into the locker room. Hey, he watered down this field. It's going to be super hot. So make sure you get hydrated and, protect yourself from the heat.
Sam Weiss was the coach.
Oh, Sam Weiss. Yes, I'm sorry. Sam Weiss.
Bears won that one 44-7, Cap, on September 28th.
Yes. It was hot, though.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I remember about it. I don't remember the score. I remember how freaking hot it was.
Hey, man, have a great rest of your day, all right?
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. We'll let you know where we want to go to dinner.
All right, you name it.
All right.
Adios.
See ya. There he is, the great Tom Thayer on the CarX Tire and Auto Hotline.
Rattle, rattle, thunder, clatter, boom, boom, boom. Don't worry, call the CarX.
Always great stuff with Tom.
It is. You know who was at Chicago Cut last night? Joe Burrow took 7 of his teammates, including Jamar Chase, to Chicago Cut last night for dinner. They got into town. Where are we going? Cut. Super cool.
It is good, man. That's really cool.
Ah, so good.
Anytime you can go on Open Table and get yourself a nice reservation.
Open Table being
good for
David Flom.
Good for the Bengals. They know what Open Table is. That's awesome.
There you go.
All right, coming up, what makes a sports owner a winner, quote unquote winner? We'll explain that coming up next, and more of your phone calls at 312-332-3776 our phone number. It's a Deal Breakers Thursday on the Kap and J Hood Morning